Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Rob's Hot Mic Reviews. Tonight I'm going to be having some smart-ass fun with Zack Snyder's filmography from least to most offensive. Uh, but before we get started, let me tell you a bit how this show works. I shoot this live, warts and all, and then I'll repost it the next day after I just clean up the front and the back of it. If you're here in the live chat, welcome. And stick around after the credits. Once I get through the show, I'll be happy to talk about all things film, whether it's what I said in here or maybe an Eric Thorpe is by and wants to talk about James Bond. We'll talk about James Bond. I've been watching a lot of James Bond of late. It's a little rough around the edges. You can see I still have the up in 5 minutes on, but so stick around after the credits. I call it the green room after party, and we'll have a nice extended chat in there. So there's that part, and then getting into the specifics, you might be asking why Zack Snyder. I've always found him a problematic and, in my opinion, kind of overrated director, but I still have to pay attention to him. So I thought this would be a great way to have some fun with that. Now, if you're looking for a proper deep reading of his work, I strongly recommend Maggie Mae Fish's outstanding 3-part, but it's really more like a 5-act play with a prologue and an epilogue. But she did this great video series, fantastic analysis. I will afterwards, I'll put something in the description and I'll put a card up here. Really strongly recommend her work on Zack Snyder, her politics and my politics, both left of center. There's a lot of overlap there. So, be warned, but she gives it a great reading and really well, even if you disagree with everything I say and disagree with everything she says, her stuff is backed up and it's solid, and you'll get a great, proper, deep reading left-wing perspective on his work. That said, this is more about me taking the piss out of Mr. Snyder and perhaps some of my many great friends within the YouTube film analysis, review, critic scene who, to me, inexplicably remain fans of his. You know what? One more thing on that before we get started, and then we'll get started, honest to God. Feel free to disagree with me as passionately as you want in the chat and in the comments below afterwards. Just be cool, especially of other chatters and commenters. Remember, they're just movies. All right. I think we should get started. Let's bit of housekeeping on how I'm doing this. All right. Where am I here? My apologies. Okay. So first of all, the one movie there's 2 movies we're of course not going to be looking at. I am shooting this on Saturday, May 22nd, 2021. So we're not going to be looking at Army of the Dead because I haven't seen it yet. And tomorrow, May 23rd, 9:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time, Universal Coordinated Time, offset -5. Jim and I are going to be doing the deep dive, and so we're leaving Army of the Dead off. We're leaving Army of the Dead off the table for now. Okay. Another film we're not going to be looking at is Legends of the Guardians: The Owls of Gaul. I swear to God, everyone, I have tried to watch this movie not once but twice, and I just couldn't get into it. And it's one of those oddball ones in his filmography anyway. I don't think that I'm really going to be missing something fundamental to Zach, like he's a friend of mine, Mr. Snyder's worldview. So I'm not looking at this one. This is not included, but I'd love to hear what you think, whether I've really missed a fundamental one or it doesn't matter or it's different from the others. I'd love to hear about it, whether it be in the chat, we can talk about it more later, or in the description below. All right. So with that out of the way, first of all, let's bring the music back. I do love a little jazzy beats while I take the piss out of Mr. Zack Snyder. All right. We're going to be doing this from least to most offensive. It will also actually, in some ways, going from what I think are some of his weakest work to his best work, which is kind of bizarre. But there it is. And let's first have some tea. Keep this in mind, folks. I am handy to have around, especially if you wanted me to produce your live stream. Be more than happy to talk about that. All right. Here's the first of the most least offensive film, in my opinion, is Zack Snyder's Justice League, actually. For as long as it is, and the storied drama around its making and unmaking and remaking, I actually, in the end, I think the biggest sin this committed to me was it was just boring. It's just such a long, hard slog of a film. But if I was to talk about its themes, and that's mostly what I'm talking about here tonight, is Zack Snyder's craft, like his ability to paint a picture, is outstanding. It's really more about the themes. You know what? Myself and Brian from Dragon Movie Guy, and so I'll also put a marker there. We had a great chat about this film specifically. This film, we had a specific, and we talked about his storytelling style, and the strengths and weaknesses of that. So go see that if you want more of my opinion on that. Here, though, as far as I was concerned, other than a really disturbing scene with Wonder Woman, and folks, just so you know, we're in the spoiler zone here. Whole movie, or the whole video. There'll be no post-credit spoiler zone. I'm going to be talking spoilers all night. For this one, there's a scene in the first act with Wonder Woman where she straight up kills people, then tells a little girl who apparently isn't traumatized at all, saying, "You can be whoever you want, sweetheart." And it was just one of them, just kind of, really, that scene got a little under my skin. But we'll get more into superhero ethics and Zack Snyder later. It wasn't that big a deal. I think more thematically, this kind of goes with what I think is a general tone of Zack Snyder's films, that everything's going to crap. He's got an almost Tolkien-esque kind of view of the world and humanity, that there was a great time before, and every era since has just been going into the shitter. Anyway, so that's kind of the tone here. But again, for the most part, I just found it really long and boring. So there you go. Number 7, least offensive. Number 6, sticking with the superheroes, sticking with the Justice League. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Looking at my notes here, again, another one where it's just that idea. It's also a bit of a slog, but more that idea that, everything's terrible. The people are humanity is, maybe unsavable or unworthy of saving. That's, another bummer kind of theme or message within Snyder's work, that only some may understand how fortunate they are to have a superhero to save them. I find it kind of vaguely offensive. Not like, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. He's implied worse in his films, and we're going to get to it. But again, just that tone of everything going to crap. Okay. So that's number 6. Let's get to number 5. Oh, poor Superman. Poor Soups. He just doesn't catch a break from me and Zack Snyder. I would say he's not catching a break from Zack Snyder. I'm a big fan of the old school Christopher Reeves Superman, the hope and a optimism about people, and engagement with human beings. And here is one, and this is a deeply, I do think, a disturbing kind of theme. That idea that, are people worth it? Won't they just freak out if they knew he could save them? I'm thinking more they just bug him with BS and be like, well, Superman, I mean, you saved my cousin. Can't you come over and, I backed the thresher into the ditch. Pa Kent, can you send your kid over? Like, I don't see people go, oh my God, he's a freak. He's a witch. Burn him. I've never really bought that. I've never really bought that idea that they would fear him. But it is deep within Snyder's view of, especially these superheroes, that the populace would either, godlike or fear, and I'm just like, what evidence, why, and why? Yeah, no, and again, it's a bummer one. But this is also where you saw a little bit of it in Justice League, a little bit of it in Dawn of Justice. But here you really start to see another thing where he's got kind of a weird deal with women. Like almost, if he ain't fetishizing them, there's a kind of a Madonna horror deal. You know what? A woman can be, a great wife, a crone-like but good Ma, like Ma Kent, the way the aged up Diane Lane, and, in a way desexed her. How he handles Amy Adams and as Lois Lane and everything. There's certain very, what I would call, kind of 50s fantasy ideas, slightly modernized, and we'll get into that a bit later. But there's a vibe there that you really start to see with all these superhero movies about how he views women within, and they have a role. And maybe in the chat, I don't want to spend all day really breaking this down. I would argue that in many respects, the Wonder Woman is not, she doesn't have a feminine role in these things. She is much like the Greeks envisioned the Amazon tribe as, a bunch of women who tried to desex themselves to a point where they were men. They were behaving as men. They cut off one breast to use the bow and arrow. Like, you even get a vibe. Like, I mean, they're just a very clinical idea of erotic love. And yeah, no, you start to see this here. Okay. So that's where we at here. That was number 5, going from, again, least to most offensive. All right. Now we're getting into the things where I can't really say I ever got really upset with any of Zack Snyder's work up to this point, even though I kind of, I did. I found all these films and I watched the ultimate versions. I watched the extent, I've seen them all and they all just seem kind of, long and slogging. But I would say Watchmen is where his filmography starts to get just really disturbing to me. And there's 2 kind of things I want to talk about here. One is it's almost reversal of you could argue that the moral exemplar in this film is Rorschach. Rorschach has a heroic ending. Rorschach is this idea of the Rorschach, his whole thesis is stated in the first few minutes about everything's scum, people are scum. It gets really kind of disturbing on the sex stuff. That she's a whore, and it really is kind of, whoa, what the hell, you sociopath, you ugly, nasty sociopath. It also kind of supports what I would call the big lie. A thing you see a lot in sci-fi movies. We can't handle the truth. We have to be tricked into a positive future, making superheroes of the super rich. Ozymandias, in many respects, is barely a superhero anymore. He's really just a rich plutocrat. And kind of like how Batman, he's a lot clearer in Batman where well, that's my superpower, I'm rich. That paternalistic idea that we have to be managed by a super class that the only way we can be properly managed is at times to be just straight up lied to. The other thing is, and this is something that it gets stronger in a couple of these later flicks, is his, again, a really weird view of sex. It's a fetish. There's basically, for all intents and purposes, a rape scene, except that it's fetishized, it's implied, or I would argue just said, nope, she likes it. She's into this. And it's like, oh, for crying out loud, this is not, I don't want to kink shame anyone. That's if that's your thing, if it was drawn as the character, both these characters, if I remember correctly, Red Spectre and the comedian, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody. If it was kind of established, that's their thing. They do fantasy role play. Then it's like, hey, you know what? I would be impressed with that. That'd be like a real progressive move. No, I don't think he is. He makes it kind of not kinky, fetishy, So, yeah, this is where it starts to get into material where you're like, kind of, what the fuck? Anyway, so that's number 4 on this list. We're getting into number 3, and then it'll be a bit of a toss-up. Who's number 2? Who's number 1? Anyway, we have, for number 3, what do we have left? We've got Sucker Punch, we've got 300, and we got Dawn of the Dead left. For number 3, I actually put Sucker Punch, which in a weird way, I think is the most visually kind of remarkable film he made. Like, there's whole set pieces in there I'm still impressed with. You could almost just cut it up into a bunch of music videos and you'd be like, okay, this is kind of cool. A little disturbing imagery there, but this is kind of neat. He really does show his ability to paint a picture, to paint a moving picture, really displays that well here. And this is where I think he really leans into that ideal. We've talked about the ideal wife, the mother as just mother, the desexed mother. Here we go, and look at the poster. It's a weird kind of he's looking at Emily Bryan as this, and she's just put in almost like angelic clothing at the end, all white and sorry about that, all white, and like a 30s style glow about her, that kind of that beauty lighting, super stylized. And she's just this pure vision of innocence. And, in a film that really kind of just revels in the sexualization, the fetishization of all these women. Again, you don't need to go any farther than the poster to kind of go, okay, this has got a kind of hentai porn thing going on here. So yes, you know what? You got all that girl power, women with guns and swords and everything, but they also need to be in garter belts, you know. And I get that he's putting it in a context where these women are trying to escape a, basically a home of where a lot of women who are in trouble. Like this is a thing that happened. Women who were decided you're acting crazy, or in other words, causing a father, like some sort of male power figure, trouble. You could get committed. You got knocked up. You got, for all intents and purposes, legally shoved off into becoming church slave labor. But here it turns it into this weird sex fantasy. And at the end, there she is. She's like, I will sacrifice. Why? Why does she have to sacrifice herself? Why does she have to have this really kind of weird sort of rape scene where she's like, I'll lay back and enjoy it so my friends can escape. And when I'm talking about this innocence thing, you even see it in the final scenes where and I can't remember the character's name nor the actor, my bad, but when she's getting on the bus to escape, she is, this kind of Midwest 50s kind of innocence regained. And so it's almost like it's a weird thing. If you do not fit that innocence regained or ideal wife or crone mother, you're for all intents and purposes a sex worker who maybe not deserves, but it's but certainly it to be objectified. And it's like that's a really narrow, and it's such a narrow view of sexuality, and which is another thing. You see hints of it in the earlier films, but we're going to talk more about it in the last two. It's this kind of really restrictive idea of a woman's sexuality and femininity, just as he's got a very narrow definition of what is masculinity. And so yeah, those are my thoughts on that. All right, we've come down to the last two. I've really kind of blown away, folks. In a way, how many films, how few, like Zack Snyder has been an A-list director, and he's an auteur. He is an auteur, like Michael Bay is an auteur. He's got a distinct style. I think he, as much as he tries to hide it in a way, he does have themes he likes to explore. A lot about masculinity, martial virtues. There's kind of this view of the world is going to crap, in part because these masculine virtues and martial virtues aren't appreciated the way they should be. And you see it really in Sucker Punch, this idea of feminine sexual virtue is being under assault by bastards. So I think there's themes he likes to explore in a particular way. He's definitely got a unique visual style that even after only 7-8 films, you're like, that's Zack Snyder, all right, Anyway, that kind of blew me away. Another fascinating thing is what you may notice. And the last two films were really a toss-up between Dawn of the Dead and 300, is except for Sucker Punch, all he's ever done is adaptations, which kind of blows my mind. He's been top of mind A-list director for a good 15, 20 years, all on the strength of adaptations, which, points to Zack, eh? All right, let's have another sip. Like I said, it looks like there's a few folks there. They are in the chat, and I'm just going to, you know what, and I look forward to them. Hopefully they'll stick around for a few more minutes, and then we'll get into post-credits into the green room after party. But, you know what, great to see you all there. Anyway, we are looking at, for anyone who just joined us, we are looking at Zack Snyder's least to most offensive films, in my opinion. All right. Let's take a look. Okay. First, one more thing, folks. Whether you like the subject of this film or my opinions on that, if you do like this kind of hot mic stuff, I would love a like about now. I'd say, hey, vote twice if you could, but you can't. And subscribe, and certainly ring the bell so that you can be notified when the next thing comes on. All right, let's a bit of a drum roll. I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm sure you can see the camera shake. We have, so I'll start with actually, so again, our toss-up is between Dawn of the Dead and 300. Put a guess on who you think it is for number one, because I'm going to jump to number one, and then I'll explain why number two is in its spot. Number one, the most offensive, the most offensive film, in my opinion, of Zack Snyder's filmography in the Snyderverse, let's call it, is 300. And I'll get into the specifics of that in a second, but let's take a look at the runner-up first, Dawn of the Dead. Now, I got to admit, some of this may be my relationship with the adapted material. Dawn of the Dead, literally, like, it subverts the original meaning of the first version, which really had, like, I mean, they had their typical gory moments. Like, it was a great genre piece. It met all the genre expectations, but it was a critique of consumer culture. Remember, the people had kind of met an equilibrium with the zombies, and it wasn't until the bikers showed up that it fucked everything up. But that these zombies were not a horde out to get them. They were, you could see them very much by the end of the film as victims of something, you know, and that there was some pathos, some poignancy about these poor bastards who ended up just, you know, literally walking, just the body walking, going through its normal paces and everything. And I really kind of, one of the things I think made the original piece stick around so much was that there was that analysis there below, but supporting what was a pretty solid genre zombie movie. And I like my zombie movies. About the only horror I can really handle. Anyway, here though it is, and you know what? Let me see if I can't pull it up, folks. I should have had this quote ready, but well, you know what? That's the nature of hot mic reviews. Okay. Oh, geez, never mind. Okay, according to no less an authority as Stephen King, how did he put it here? Okay, one of the, and this is one, right, it's as high as number 2. Early imagery in the film is talking about Muslims. It was made, like, it came out in 2004, of course, 2001, recent memory in the American and really in the, let's call it the West. He, lot of Islamophobia. And I would argue that Zack Snyder is exploiting it. And here is a quote from no less worthy as Stephen King. And I'll put it up on the screen if I can, everyone. Oh, there we are. And I will also put this as a link in the description. By 2004, this is Stephen King in Danse Macabre, and the 2010 version of Danse Macabre. By 2004, only 3 years downriver from 9/11, rampant consumerism was the last thing on our minds. What haunted our nightmares was the idea of suicide bombers driven by an unforgiving and unthinking, most of us believed, ideology and religious fervor. You could beat them up or burn them, but they just kept coming, the news reports assured us. They would keep on coming until either we were dead or they were. The only way to stop them was a bullet in the head. That's exactly what Snyder's zombies are, it seems to me. Fast-moving terrorists who never quit. You can't debate with them, you can't parley with them, you can't even threaten their homes or families with reprisals. Now, never mind the horrific politics of that. And yeah, folks, that's some disturbing stuff coming from Stephen King. But he's bang on. I remember when this film came out. Now, looking at it from a Canadian's perspective, we were at a remove from the tragedy of 9/11. Not an order of magnitude, more, but a degree, a couple of degrees away, a degree away. There were Canadians that died in that tragedy. But you look at it, and unlike George Romero, who is satirizing something, he leaned into it because I think he believes it. And you see that not only in 300, but you see this idea really well explicated in Man of Steel, where, what's the bad guy's name? I can't remember. Anyway, General, damn it. Somewhere I'll do a correction. But when he has to break his neck because he's unrelenting, he won't give up. And that's a deep assumption within Snyder's work, is that we're up against something that can only be killed. And without pity, even. And this film kind of leans into it. It also, this is his first film, also his first kind of exploration of, well, you got let's say the modern man, the pansy man, who is unwilling to kill, and, or there's the gay guy, and it's really about the real men who are willing to kick some ass, that have heroic deaths, have heroic deaths, and have, what's the word I'm looking for? Heroic deaths with meaning. Whereas the others just kind of have shitty deaths because they're not man enough to, and even Sarah Polley. Sarah Polley is that, the ideal wife kind of character who could be an Amazon, who becomes an Amazon, takes on these martial traits, these masculine martial traits. So, yeah, this is, and yeah, it really bugs me, kind of like The Watchmen, when in adapting a work that he's flipping the original premise. It's not something that George Romero is going, oh, well, I'm so glad you got rid of that part. It's not like Alan Moore with The Watchmen is going, yeah, you know what? Fascism does have some positive points, So, anyway, let's get to number one and why I chose it for number one. And again, interestingly enough, folks, this is a good movie. I think of all of them, it's his best film. If you let go of some of the themes, it's one of his tightest films. It's under 2 hours. It's has more scenes. He has a few scenes. He lets them breathe. There's still kind of that, that kind of pretentiousness, this is an important moment kind of thing going on. But yeah, it still is the best film of all 7 of the 8 I'm willing to shamelessly judge. it's also his clearest. And here he's adapting Frank Miller's work. And yeah, Frank Miller was totally thumbs up with this guy and his take on it. It's that, again, a huge celebration of martial virtues, a denigration of anything else. You see it when, it's in the first act or kicking into the second maybe, where he meets the others from a different kingdom. And what are you? Sculptor. There's that little sneer. We only are soldiers. It's terrible history. The reason why the Spartans were only soldiers is because they had the clamp down. They were the thugs of the Peloponnesian Peninsula, everyone within their sway. It's one of the reasons they'd never really let too many soldiers leave Sparta, because they think there might be a revolt. They needed to, their whole exploitation of everybody around them kind of forced them to have this martial and fascistic society structure. Anyway, so you have that going on. And again, you also have there is this, an ideal wife. There's also that, just that creepy, the usual smear on politicians. Although, you know what? Let's be honest. They're the ones most of the time doing the shitty work of getting us to get along. People with opposite viewpoints, and they're the ones in the middle just trying to make the gizmo go. I'm not saying that I'm fallen in love with elected officials. I worked for them for too many years to be that big a fan, but I do get their purpose in society. The creepiness around the oracle and that, and it's like, is this? Yes, it is necessary, because this is how he sees the world. Is that without that kind of structure, that it'll be just creeps creeping on girls, and it's like, while at the same time fetishizing her. It's just weird. Yeah, clearest, but also the most offensive, and in a weird kind of way, also the one where I'm like, boy, great effing movie. Anyway, all right, guys, I think that is about it for the show proper. Boy, I went on for a while. That was a lot longer than I expected, but we are talking about several really well-made films. Well-made, let's say. Again, a lot of boring kind of slogs, but still worthy of discussion. Again, before we go, I will one more time beg you for a like, and remind you that we are going to be taking a look at another Zack Snyder film tomorrow night. That's Sunday, May 23rd, 9:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time, coordinated Universal Time -5. Come check it out. As much as I dislike virtually all the films in his filmography, or they bug me in some way, honestly, folks, I'm excited. I'm excited about this flick. It has a fun vibe, and heck, it's got Tig Notaro in it. Anytime I see her in a movie, it's one of those, it's like you go to a party and you don't know if it's going to be good or maybe it's going to be great, whatever, but you see that one person, and for me in a film, one of them is Tig Notaro. You go, well, it can't be that bad. Look, Tig's here. So anyway, really looking forward to checking out this flick, and hope you folks can join us and where we go through the craft and everything, and the chat. It is the best chat on the internet. So I think that's about it. Everyone, if you're here, stick around. We're about to head into the green room after party. We'll put the chat up on the screen. We'll go through some of these questions. We'll have a nice confab on everything. But first, you know what? I think I'll just bring the tunes down for a second and insert credits here.